This is a broadcast from the Pop Cult Pod.
Broadcasting from an undisclosed location in Ireland, known as the Pop Cult Compound, where the craze for film, television, video games, and much, much more.
Why do we fought? So that we can learn to pick us.
The Pop Cult Pod, the only podcast with an actual cult following, hosted by your cult leader, Tompott.
Just when it feels like the world is at an end, I come back to set things right with the world. The Pop Cult Pod is back. Gotta talk about a lot of stuff today. Not just news, but also, you might have noticed that the intro of the show is a bit different. It's removed the mention of the Phoenix Wrestling Network. Dun, dun, dun. We'll get to why that is at the very end of the show. In fact, it might not be part of the show properly, which is a reason for reasons I'll get into at the very, very end. Also, this episode is being brought to you in English and Irish since it's St. Patrick's Day. So if you followed us from social media, maybe you got the red pill, which means you're listening to the English one. If you pick the green pill, you're listening to it Osquelga. And either way, welcome. I hope you enjoyed the show. Now, one thing I will say before we get into the news properly, I have not done an episode in quite a while. I've done a normal episode since last year as well. So just to give it a bit of an address at the top of the show why that is. First of all, this episode has been a long time coming, and the problem with doing this podcast is that news moves quickly in Hollywood, especially when you're covering 3 different mediums. And what tends to happen is if you don't cover a piece of news then and there, I can take all my notes, do all my research on it, and then what will happen is it's been too long. And what happened with this is that a lot of stuff has been affected over the last days because, of course, the coronavirus, which we're going to talk about, the massive impact that's had on Hollywood. So in general, a lot of news I had and a lot of stuff I had prepared to go, kind of I had to throw out and kind of start again. I had to do that an unprecedented amount of the times for this show. This is the most times I've ever had to basically tear down a show and start it again. Also, of course, the Phoenix Wrestling Network of it all meant that I was kind of an uncertain thing. I was unsure of whether I should just restart the whole show, change the whole thing. So I've had to make a few minor changes. But I will go through a bit of the layout because, again, this is a bit of a chaotic show, a bit of a weird one. Hopefully we'll get back to normal at some point. News and trailers we'll do as normal. I'm going to try get every segment I've done on the show just because I want to get a bit of normality. So it's going to be news, trailers, a minute-long meltdown, one that I watch where we're going to talk about a show I'm watching, and it'll be more than one I watched this week. I understand a lot of people are isolated or staying inside, so I'll try recommend a few good things to check out. I haven't done it in a while, but I'm going to do a review of Onward. I haven't done a review of a show, or a movie, I should say, on a podcast to a massive extent in a long time, but I'll do that. And then we have a different segment at the very end. It used to be reasons to justify my place on the Phoenix Wrestling Network. Of course, that's kind of irrelevant now. So, yeah, a lot of things we need to get to. Need to get on with the show properly. So, welcome back. Thank you for listening. And here we go on with the news.
Not just news. Not just new news. But the new.
I always just say news, but I forget that the theme is new news. It's 3 times as exciting. I'll tell you what's exciting. The prospect of a new Indiana Jones film. Or is it exciting? Maybe. I don't know. Let's get into it and decide, because this is one of those movies that I won't believe it's happening until I sit down watching it, because I keep hearing about it. We heard at one stage, Harrison Ford said that new Indiana Jones was going to film in April. Now again, that's probably quite unlikely. I think it was unlikely to begin with. But with all this stuff that's going on with the virus, a lot of filming has been cancelled, which we'll get to in a minute. What's more interesting is Steven Spielberg is apparently out as director. He is not going to direct this movie. Every Indiana Jones film has been directed by Steven Spielberg. And of course, George Lucas was heavily involved with other aspects of the thing. I mean, George Lucas is sort of retired. I'm assuming he'll have some input on this. So it looks like of those 3, and remember, you have to remember the reason there was such a big long delay for an Indiana Jones film between the first 3 and the 4th one was that they were allowed to never make. They had a deal, basically, is my understanding, and 2 people in that group of 3 had to agree to the concept. And George Lucas was like, "Why don't we do a film on aliens?" And they were like, "No." And eventually, I guess Lucas was just like, "Aliens." And eventually they warmed him. That's my George Lucas impression. I don't know, is it accurate? I don't really know what George Lucas sounds like, to be honest. I think it's something like that. I'm going to put Ewoks to blink. He sounds like Kermit the Frog. So I don't really know what this means for a couple of reasons. Spielberg is out. I think that's a good reason for reasons I get to. Looks like Harrison Ford is kind of the last of the OGs involved with Indiana Jones. Now, of course, there is going to be another Indiana Jones. When Disney bought Lucasfilm, Indiana Jones is one of the big properties they had to be looking at. There's a lot of things you can do with that license, which wouldn't surprise me. What is also interesting is that the director they're apparently looking at to take over is James Mangold, best known for Logan, I would say, but more recently he did Ford v Ferrari or Le Mans 66, depending on where you've seen this film. He's done 310 to Yuma, The Wolverine, plenty of films, plenty of really good films. As much as I didn't like Ford v Ferrari, he's a very competent director, and I think the one that a lot of people are pointing at to a film like Indiana Jones is Logan, because of course it dealt with, a character at the end of their rope, which you have to imagine, if they do bring Harrison Ford back, is the route they're going to take it. And here's my reservations. Here's what I'm curious about. Okay, Spielberg is gone. Lucas is retired. Again, he probably will have some input, but he's not going to be as actively involved in it as he probably has been in previous entries. I think if they were going to reboot Indiana Jones, now is probably the time to do it. And I know that's sacrilege to some people, but it just makes sense. Like, Indiana Jones, the character, it's stunning that we had Harrison Ford in that role for as long as we did. It just kind of feels like, even in the regard to what that character is, not a rip-off of, but he's an ode to kind of the serial filmmaking. And that was something that was meant to go on forever. And I don't think Harrison Ford is going to be able to do it much longer. In fact, I don't know if he really is up to it now. Like, anytime I see him in a film now, he just doesn't seem that committed. He doesn't really feel like he wants to be there. I do think he would, turn it on a bit for Indiana Jones. He seems to have a great affection and loyalty to that character. But I kind of feel like now is the time for a fresh start. Like, it's been so long since the last Indiana Jones film. Spielberg is gone. Lucas is kind of gone. Maybe now is the time. Like, because if realistically, if they set up another Indiana Jones film, it's just going to be exactly what the last Indiana Jones film, which was like, oh, we're going to set up so this character might take his place, and they bungled that. We're not going to get much. We're not going to get Shia LaBeouf back, and mainly because I don't think we really need that. And you have to also remember that if they were making it and they were staying true to some sort of timeline from the last Indiana Jones, we'd be into what, the 60s now? Which I don't know if Indiana Jones works in the 60s, really. It's kind of an odd one. I don't know. I think it's although maybe Cold Warrior would work. It could be interesting. I feel like if you're going to do a fresh start on this character, now is the time to do it. And recasting someone as Indiana Jones, fine. A lot of people I've seen, and this is actually an idea I don't mind, I can understand that certain portions of the internet wouldn't like it, is that if you were going to get a character from the original lore of Indiana Jones to take his place, Short Round would make perfect sense. Like, he's a character that's tied to the franchise. He has grown up since. And I mean, there's lots of Asian American actors that would perfectly take that role. Steven Yeun, for example. And of course, then you're also getting diversity into the franchise if that's something people want. I know studios want it. I know certain members of the audience won't, but it's also a natural progression of that. It would make perfect sense for that character to take up the role. I don't know. On the other hand, I kind of feel like if you're going to go back to this franchise, it should be a fresh start. Another series looking for a fresh start is Lizzie McGuire, and right now it's not exactly positive that it's going to get it. I'm sorry, I'm just laughing. Never in my wildest dreams that I imagined that when I started this podcast, I would be talking about Lizzie McGuire, but here we are. This is a fascinating story, and it's not fascinating really for anything involved in the show itself. It's more fascinating to see kind of a mess and a kind of a weird situation Disney finds themselves in. So let's just refresh our memory first of all. If you don't know what Lizzie McGuire was, it was a TV show on the Disney Channel in the early 2000s. Okay, I will admit I have seen bits of Lizzie McGuire, but like I was that age where I was just too old. And to be honest, when I was younger, I was kind of more interested in stuff that was animated and really love live action shows, really. And also, I suppose, you know, as a young boy, I was like, oh, it's a girl show, which is pretty stupid. But anyway, like, Lizzie McGuire, my basic understanding is it was, you know, following this girl around, and she kind of breaks the fourth wall. She has an animated alter ego. And it was kind of cute, kind of funny comedy that was generally well received. People really liked it. Now, this was, of course, starring Hilary Duff and the showrunner, what was her name? Something Minsky. Terry Minsky, there we go. So they decide, you know, we did Lizzie McGuire. There's now Disney Plus. Disney Plus is going to show all of Lizzie McGuire. So why don't we bring back Lizzie McGuire for Disney Plus? Makes perfect idea, right? Disney love weaponizing nostalgia. If you want to get the kids who were young watching Lizzie McGuire, who are now older, have their own cash to spend, you want them to get Disney Plus, maybe they'll get this so they can watch the original Lizzie McGuire and the new reboot. Makes perfect sense. So they got all the gang back together, all the actors, a lot of the actors at least, and of course Hilary Duff and Minsky. They had filmed 2 episodes of the show. And now the show has been put on hiatus. The creator, Terry Minsky, has left. And it puts the status of this show in jeopardy as they find a new showrunner. But this is where things are getting interesting. Not just for Lizzie McGuire, but for Disney's plans in general in the streaming race, okay? So Hilary Duff put out some statements saying basically, we want the show to move to Hulu. And just to give a very clear background, if you're not aware, Hulu is a streaming platform in America. It's been around for a long, long time. But when Disney bought Fox, they basically got ownership of it. We've talked a bit about this in the past. The general idea is that Disney Plus will take all the kind of family-friendly stuff on Disney's platforms and, you know, basically in their vault. And the more darker adult stuff will go to Hulu. So she's saying, I want to go on Hulu. In other words, I want this show to be a bit more mature. Because she was saying that the reason Disney pulled the plug is that it wasn't family friendly. What's basically seems to be confirmed, to be honest, from what we can gather. The first episode apparently had allusions to sex, and cheating was one of the plots in the first episodes of the early scripts. 2 of these episodes are filmed. It's unsure if they're going to see the light of day or whether the show is going to go back to work. We don't entirely know whether Hilary Duff can just say, I'm done, I'm not coming back until the showrunner comes back and we get to do our original vision. The thing is, Disney signed off on this. They signed off on this take. And now they're kind of reneging on it. And the thing about this is, it kind of reveals a very big problem with the Disney strategy. Now, first of all, I'm guessing their obvious idea for putting this on Disney Plus is, oh, well, all these people are going to stream all of the original series and then move on to the Hilary as a grown-up. Not Hilary, Lizzie. Ugh. The thing about it is this, right? I mean, again, I don't know entirely whether kids of the modern era are going to go, oh, I can watch Lizzie McGuire? Wow, what's Lizzie McGuire? I also don't think they're going to say, oh, there's more Lizzie McGuire, let me check that out. Target with Lizzie McGuire with the reboot, like, no? And in that regard, surely Lizzie should grow up like the fans of the show did. Like, the people who watched this as kids are now adults with their own disposable income who would have an interest in this. At least that's my thinking. Now, basically, Hilary Duff said we want to move to Hulu as 2 shows have now been moved from Disney Plus to Hulu. That's Love Victor, which is a spin-off of Love Simon. It has some LGBT themes. Apparently that's why it was moved. I'm not entirely sure about that. And High Fidelity with Zoe Kravitz, based on the Nick Hornby book, has also moved to Hulu. And they want Lizzie McGuire moved to Hulu. And I think this is an interesting story. I want to know how it plays out. Not that I'm a Lizzie McGuire fan, just because I find it interesting, because this is really exposing the problem with Disney's approach to streaming. It makes sense on paper to say Disney Plus for kids, Hulu for adults. And, you know, you can even buy them in a package, right? The problem with it is this. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't be a streaming service just aimed at kids and hope to be a massive market leader. And you can't do just kids and adult content and market yourself as a kids streaming service. In other words, this either needs to have variety to succeed, or else eventually it will be doomed to fail. Like, don't get me wrong. The Marvels, the Star Wars, the TV shows, people are going to come back for those. But the rollout of Disney Plus has been pretty dreadful for a couple of reasons. We have, subscribed to it now and you can watch The Mandalorian. But there really hasn't been a lot else. Especially as far as big original shows go. You have to more or less wait until late into the summer, which means if you did buy this, could be a good 9 months. And it's really encouraging people, more so than Netflix, I would say, to sign up and sign out every now and then. I don't need it now because The Mandalorian's on. Okay, and yeah, they're rolling out episodes week to week to try to sustain people. But eventually, it's not going to work. Kids might, want to check it out. Eventually, they'd probably get bored of it. Parents would buy it for their kids, but you can't have it both ways. Adults aren't going to come to Disney Plus unless there's great original stuff. And if you're just aiming all your shows at kids and holding back the content on that caveat, they're not going to stick around. Now, I have Disney Plus. I have a year contract on Disney Plus. If someone said, what service would you get rid of? It would be Disney Plus. There is not much on it right now. And as much as I'm not going to rush to watch the original Lizzie McGuire or the Lizzie McGuire reboot, it stands to a general point. You can't have a service that's aimed just at kids and hope for it to succeed when other places can cater to both. And eventually that is going to catch up with them. Don't get me wrong. I would sign up for Disney Plus for Falcon and Winter Soldier, for WandaVision, for Loki, for the Star Wars shows, for the next Mandalorian season. It's like people are going to come back, but eventually people are just going to either pirate it or watch it online or wait until the whole thing is out and then sign up. It's an interesting strategy. I don't think it's going to work for them in the long run. And it also raises the question of, we don't have Hulu internationally. It's only available in America. So what's going to happen there? I don't know. I think their strategy is flawed. But it's going to be interesting to see how it works out. Well, we may not have the Lizzie McGuire TV show to watch, but we do have a show to remind us of the horrific nightmare reality that we're currently in, and that is The Last of Us. HBO have announced that the post-apocalyptic, critically acclaimed video game from Naughty Dog is going to be adapted into a TV show. Some interesting stuff about this. First of all, it being co-created, I guess, or co-written and adapted by Craig Mazin, which, if you look at his credits, they're really, really funny. It's like Scary Movie 3, Scary Movie 4, The Hangover, Chernobyl. Which is like, if you this is really shows, by the way, how you could really mess with people here if you were a news writer. You could be like, Scary Movie 3 writer adapting The Last of Us. Jesus. Or you could be like, Chernobyl creator Craig Mazin is going to write and executive produce The Last of Us show. Very big difference there. But yeah, he's involved. We also have the involvement of Neil Druckmann, who is the creative director and writer of the game over there at Naughty Dog. We don't have a lot more details here. It's going to be a joint production between Sony and PlayStation Productions. It'll be the first show that PlayStation Productions are actually producing. It's coming to HBO and it's expected to cover elements of the first game and some parts of the sequel. The Last of Us adaptation has been kind of in development hell for a long, long time now. Almost immediately, there was talk of a movie. And, of course, never really materialized. At one point, Sam Raimi, I think, was producing it. I kind of feel like if you're going to make The Last of Us into another medium, TV is where it belongs. Now, I think it probably should be a limited series, but I think, yeah, you can explore it a lot because there is a lot going on in The Last of Us. I don't think you could cover that in a movie. And one of the big concerns I have, and I think a couple of people have, is, of course you have the immersion of video games. Like, you're involved in it, you're controlling that character. I talked before about why video game movies tend to suck, and it kind of stands to reason with this is as the same reason, basically. Like, the Bioshock movie, for example, the ending of that is the Bioshock game, I should say. the ending of that is very contingent on your involvement and you controlling it, whereas that's why that probably would not work as a movie. This, it's like, it totally works as another medium. It's a very cinematic story. But the question is, when you adapt that for television, does it just become another post-apocalyptic story? Is it just The Road? Is it just The Walking Dead? I don't know. I hope I'm wrong. I really love The Last of Us. Of course, we're still waiting on the second game to come out. And I do think that having Neil Druckmann involved means that we get something quite faithful. As for what happens next, I don't know. We have to get casting out of the way. I've seen a lot of people fan casting people. Antonio Banderas, Josh Brolin. Who's another name I've seen thrown around a lot? Nicola Castor-Waldo. Of course, I mean, for Ellie, it's kind of going to be instant casting. I think there is a lot of people you could cast in that, but generally Ellie is, a young character, a young teenager in the first game. Macy Williams wanted to play her at one point. I don't know if I see that. Of course, the character looks a lot like Ellen Page, but Ellen Page is into her 30s now. How long is she going to be playing, teenagers? Regardless, though, I am quite excited for this. I hope it works out. We will see as it materializes, and I'm sure we'll get a bit more information as it comes to light. Speaking of a film, though, that has come to light, my transitions are terrible today. If you think they're bad in the show, you should hear them, like the ones I've cut out. They're just really, really bad. But anyway, it doesn't matter, because a movie that probably will be really bad, I turned it around, is a spin-off Spider-Man movie coming from writer Roberto Orci. Orci? I always call him Robert Orci, but here everyone seems to be calling him as Roberto Orci, so maybe I've been getting his name wrong. Regardless, he has been tapped to write a new Spider-Man movie in Sony's Spider-Verse. Now, there's so many things I hate about this story. That Sony have a Spider-Verse. Of course, Morbius is coming out. Venom 2 is meant to come out this year again. Assume none of this stuff gets delayed. They seem to be working on a lot of stuff. They have, at one point, were working on Silver and Black. I think that's not happening. Nightwatch was one they were working on. Silk. What was that weird one? What was that one? It was that old woman who sits... Madame Web. I was going to say that old woman that sits in a web. Yeah, Madame Web. We don't know what he's writing. We just know he's been hired to write. We don't know if it's going to have some involvement in the MCU. Possibly not. Again, it does sound like more and more that the deal between Sony and Disney about Spider-Man is strong enough. Stronger than we first anticipated, at least. There has been talk that both sides want to keep it going. Spider-Man is going to appear in Disney Ventures in the theme park. Now, of course, we also have to remember that Bob Iger has announced that he's going to step down as Disney CEO. But Roberto Orci has some very mixed credits. A lot of his stuff has been with Alex Kurtzman, most notably 2 of the Transformers films, bad ones. The Star Trek films, the first 2 at least, which a lot of people didn't like. They're kind of writers that remind me a lot of David S. Goyer, where it's like, oh, you were involved in The Dark Knight. And then you're like, what was that all Christopher Nolan? And then when you look at the rest of his credits, you're like, oh God, it was definitely not his doing that this was good. So yeah. Now, what's worse is that the movie they did work on was a Spider-Man movie, and it was The Amazing Spider-Man 2. One of, in my opinion, the worst attempts at setting up a universe, the most boring, overstuffed films of any superhero film recently. It's really a dreadful movie, and it really showed that Sony had their eyes on just setting up a cinematic universe, which they clearly still do. So they're bringing in the guy who gave them the film that killed any chance of that happening to attempt to expand this. This is let's make it clear. This deal between Disney and Sony very likely might not have happened if The Amazing Spider-Man 2 hadn't been so bad. And now they're bringing that guy back to do a spin-off which most people don't want anyway. I really wonder how Morbius is going to do. I think Morbius is going to bomb, in my head. And that could change, of course. Venom, I think, succeeded because there was that curiosity. It did have Tom Hardy, who is, a very good get for that role. And of course, Venom is a character who people know. Morbius isn't. So we don't know exactly what Roberto Orci is working on. It could be one of the spin-off characters. It could be Sinister Six. We don't know. doesn't really fill me with confidence. But there you go. He is writing a Marvel film set within Sony Spider-Verse for Sony. Hopefully it's good. I'm not entirely sure. I talked at the start of the show about how I've had to go back and forth with a lot of the news stories this week. And this is one of them. Because a lot of stuff has happened in this film. This James Bond is too busy to do anything. So he won't have time to die today. James Bond, I have to pick up my kids. I have errands to run. Someone's got to do the shopping. I don't have time to die. James Bond's a no time to die. Originally, I was just going to be talking about the running time, which is apparently 2 hours 43 minutes. I was going to talk about Billie Eilish song, the new theme for the Bond movie, which, let me give my thoughts on that very quickly. I like Billie Eilish. I like this song. Hard to tell how it's going to run without the titles, you know. I'm not entirely happy with the trend that's developed with Bond movies now where they're all slow ballads. You know, Skyfall was that. What was the Sam Smith one? Writings on the Wall. Yeah, they're all just slow ballads now. And I guess that's because it seems like every movie that Daniel Craig has done and they want it to be like, oh, maybe he'll die in this one. And then he doesn't. And they're like, oh, but maybe he'll die in the next one. So yeah, they're all kind of slow. I like it. It's just hard to tell how it's going to work without seeing the titles. It's maybe a little bit slow. I would like to have had a bit more life to it, you know. I do kind of think it's, you know, like with a lot of these Bond movies, is that kind of slow instrumental kind of bit, and then it explodes into like a big orchestral thing. And this one kind of never gets to those heights, so I was kind of hoping there'd be a bit more oomph to it. But overall, I think it's a good song. Of course, none of this fucking matters. Because if there was no time to die before, there's plenty of time to die now, because of course it's been delayed significantly. This is all due to the coronavirus. I'm going to talk very extensively about the coronavirus in Hollywood in a second. This was the first of the films really to heed the warning of the coronavirus and delay. So it was meant to come out the first week of April. It's now not coming out till the middle of November, which is massive. Again, the running time could completely change because it's essentially now stuck in post-production for the next 7 to 8 months. So where does that leave us? Who knows? I thought that the advertising for this was a little bit lax. Maybe they had anticipated this. It is a real shame that they put the song out, because, you know, ideally when these songs come out, they're meant to come out a little bit before the movie, so people know the James Bond movie is coming out, and then from the movie the song reaches in popularity. It's going to be hard to get this song, you know, like they're going to have to really, really push the song again to get it up the charts in 8 months' time. There's a lot of advertising that has gone into it. I haven't seen any TV adverts aside from the Heineken ones, which were tying into No Time to Die, which again now are they going to have to do another advertising campaign? Now this is the thing a lot of studios are facing now with this advertising issue, which is that for the more recent ones, the advertising is out. Some of them have spent a lot of their advertising budget. James Bond, No Time to Die. I keep saying James Bond, No Time to Die. I hate that. I'm just going to call it No Time to Die. It's estimated they could lose about 50 million on marketing. That's the high end. I've heard 30 million as well. And that's fine, because this will be a big movie. They're hoping it's going to hit a billion. And it just wouldn't happen with the conditions cinemas are in. So this makes sense, but James Bond... I nearly did it again. James Bond, No Time to Die sounds weird. James Bond in No Time to Die. No Time to Die made the right call by doing this early, because they obviously had some sort of contingency plan. In other words, we can put this in November. Now again, I assume it's going to be in November. There's now possibly films that might move from November, not because of the virus, but because they have to compete with Bond now. But it's lucky, because a lot of films that have been delayed and moved don't have a clear path of release now. When are they coming out? We don't know. Which brings us to, the biggest story in entertainment right now, as the biggest story in the world, quite rightly. And it's the coronavirus. Because it has messed up Hollywood majorly. Everything is affected by this. And I want to talk first about things that have been cancelled or delayed. But before I say that, I also want to very clearly say this. And that is, one of the unseen factors of this is that movies that were greenlit to start production now won't in a lot of instances. And in fact, this could really mess with a lot of films that are meant to come out. Some films might never come back from this. Some movies that were set to start production will not happen. And the other thing is, the virus is something I haven't seen people mention. The virus, of course, is affecting, you know, a lot of films that are large-scale productions on film and TV. There's also been a looming talk of a writer's strike this summer. And if that comes along as well, we're going to see a massive black hole in the entertainment industry as far as what's being released. Last time we had the writer's strike was back in 2007, and that led to a massive influx of reality TV. I said influx there. Influx of reality TV. So the question is, what impact is all of this going to have? Now, I put out a tweet at pop_cult_pod, subtle plug, where I said that this was quite early on, I think, or early on relatively, before everything got delayed and shut down, that this is going to have massive consequences on both the release of films and its effect on conventional cinemas, but also it's going to be a massive potential boom for streaming services. A lot of the big films here can survive. They can delay and eventually come out and still be blockbusters. But it could irrevocably damage cinemas. The cinemas are not doing that well at the moment anyway. Aside from these blockbusters, now they don't have blockbusters and they're going to have to shut down for God knows how long. This could be a massive, you know, hit for them. And the films kind of in the middle, the middling, mid-budget films, this could be the death of a lot of these movies. There's a lot of movies I could easily see not getting a cinematic release now and going straight to streaming services. And I think that the reliance on that means that some of the streaming services, you know, Netflix, Disney Plus, which is soon going to launch in Europe as well, could really make massive strides here. And it could be really a serious blow to theatrical releases. But we'll have to see. This is just me speculating. There's a few things that have happened since I said that kind of lead credence to that. But we'll talk first about the major movies that have been delayed or pulled because of the coronavirus. One of the most notable ones is Fast and the Furious 9. Now, this is a notable one for a lot of reasons. This was originally coming out in May. So, you know, 6 weeks. Bit more. So, some people are saying, oh, well, it could be sorted by then. We really don't know. The marketing for this has started. They have put out one trailer, but they did a massive event to launch this trailer with, you know, massive parties and trailers in some parts of the world and concerts, basically. But again, this is the reason for this delaying. There's a few big ones for this. First of all, this movie will make a lot of money regardless. Does not matter when it comes out. It's a guaranteed $1 billion movie, I would assume. The other thing is that these movies really hang their hat on huge openings in China. Like, The Fast and Furious is one of the biggest franchises in Chinese cinema, surprisingly. Chinese cinemas are closed, or at least they were, unless they're starting to open now. But really, it's not a good idea for it to open when that's going to really impact its box office. The hit you will take on advertising is nothing compared to the amount of money you would lose if this couldn't open in certain territories. What's more baffling, and this could be a worrying sign for things to come for other films, this movie has been delayed nearly a year. Originally we were getting it in May 2020. It is now not coming out till April 2021, which is massive. Like, God damn it. I keep doing it. James Bond, No Time to Die. Why do I say that? Why am I saying that? Are any of the Bond films marketed as James Bond? Or do they just... I don't think they've been marketed like that since like the 70s. James Bond and Moonraker. James Bond, Thunderball. Coming to television. The network premiere of James Bond, GoldenEye. Maybe it's just because the title is so old that it's like No Time to Die sounds like such an old school throwback title that naturally I'm like, James Bond in. Anyway. Yeah, as I was saying, No Time to Die was lucky because they obviously had been planning this for a while and they're able to get out before the end of the year. Like, November is a good release slot. Like, we've talked before about how there's basically now 2 big seasons in movies, the summer season and the winter season. And really, summer, it seems like, is growing outwards every year. But this, it got lucky in that it was able to delay it for a couple of months, really. Like, 8 months is or not 8 months, 7 months is a big jump, but it's nothing compared to what some of these other films are going to be facing. It cannot have been easy for Universal to delay this nearly a year. It probably is worth a hit financially, though. Mulan. This was a very surprising one because it seemed like the horses had really already left the barn. Like, the marketing in this has really already started. Like, we've had Super Bowl spots. Music videos have been released. This was meant to come out in 2 weeks, 27th of March. They had a premiere for this movie. All of this stuff, like they started screening it for people. And when it looked like movies were going to get delayed, people were like, there's no way they can delay Mulan. It's too late in the game. But they have. Now, Mulan has had a couple of problems with it production-wise anyway, at my understanding. This is a really expensive movie. I've heard it's quite good, but it's really expensive. And it's a pretty big hit to delay it at this late stage. So the question is it a hit that it can recover from financially? Now, what's also a factor is that this has no new release date. What that means, who knows? Where is it going to go? Again, this was also been reliant on Chinese box office. So we don't know when this is going to get released right now. It could be a year. We really don't know. The Quiet Place Part 2 was also pulled very late in the game. It was meant to come out next week. Maybe even the end of this week by the time you hear this, actually. It's been delayed. Again, it's a relatively low-budget horror film compared to the other ones. And it will be a hit no matter when it comes out. But again, the marketing had started. It is a low-budget horror film, so I wouldn't be that worried about it. And when I say low-budget horror film, it's a decent-sized budget compared to a lot of horror films, but it's not like they're delaying a big blockbuster. It'll be a success whenever. They just don't know where to put it right now. Of course, if you can bring it out around October, but there is no guarantee that things will be back to normal in October. We have to kind of see. The Lovebirds. This is a Kumail Nanjiani film with Issa Rae. It was meant to come out in April. There's no date been given for this. And what I'm thinking, again, with some of these smaller films that are going to get delayed, I could see them not getting a theatrical release. This is an action comedy. Could maybe see it go elsewhere onto streaming. I would not be surprised if Netflix were breaking out their wallet for some of the movies that are going to get delayed. There's also Antlers, a low-budget horror film, which is meant to be quite good, actually, with Kerry Russell. That's been delayed. This was a Disney release, meant to come out in April. No longer. Blue Story. This has actually come out in England, I believe. It's a gang movie. That was kind of why it made the news. It was fighting at some cinemas in England. Meant to come out March 28th. Now been pulled. No date has been given. Again, could see this show up somewhere because it's already been released in other territories. How long are you going to hold on to this? And realistically, how much money can it possibly make? The one that I find funny, and I shouldn't because this is something we should probably take a bit seriously, and it's only funny because of the film that that it is. I think I've been talking about this movie since the first podcast episode I did. We are 30 episodes in now. And there's been like month-long breaks in between some of those episodes. New Mutants has been delayed for, I think it's 7th time. No, 5th, I think. Okay, yeah, let's not be ridiculous. I think it's his 5th time being delayed. It doesn't have a new release date. It's been pulled. It actually looked like it was going to do it this time. The film was due out on April 3rd. It's looking for a possible new 2020 release to be announced at another time. Do you know what, though? You have to hand it to Disney, who are committed on giving this a theatrical release. Everyone thought they were going to put it on streaming, and they still haven't done that. If there's going to be a time for them to do it, I could see it being now. Or maybe I could be talking about this film in my 2021 preview next year. Which is another thing. My last episode was a 2020 preview. That's like totally pointless now because half of 2020 is done. Most of it seems to have been just thrown out the window. So there we go. The most notable absence from this, that everyone is talking about, is Black Widow. Disney have not delayed Black Widow yet. They've delayed a lot of their other major releases. I'm going to sneeze. Into my elbow. Perfect. I was going to cut that out, but you need to good hygiene. Cough into your elbow, wash your fucking hands. Black Widow. Everyone is expecting it to be delayed. It still hasn't been delayed. Disney have been asked if they were going to delay it, and they said they were very firmly like, no. Again, Universal said the same thing about Fast and Furious. People weren't taking this as the serious hit it could be. But the truth is, now we're at a point where the decision is sort of being made for them. I don't mean the government is stepping in, but AMC, Regal Theatres, what's the other one? Was it Pantheon? I can't remember the other cinema chain. But basically, most of the cinema chains in America, especially the big ones, are saying, from now on, limited seating. Same thing with the Omniplex in Ireland. You can only get half of our seating. There's meant to be a gap in between each pairing. And who is going to the cinema at a time like this? I mean, not that there's much to see anyway. I was very much contemplating going to the cinema, and then I was like, I can see Bloodshot. It's not worth it. It's not worth the risk, especially for a movie like that. Black Widow, I think, it's gotta have to move, really. It's going to have a serious dent in its box office otherwise, or else it could be a serious health hazard if it doesn't and people go out to the cinemas for this. So we don't know where that will mean it gets moved to, how many other movies are going to get delayed. We could really see everything just being shifted. Is this going to affect the summer blockbuster season? It very well could. Things are up in the air right now. We won't have a better idea of that until closer to the time. But at the moment, it's very much played havoc with films that were meant to come out in the next month or two. Now, that isn't the only way it's affected things. As of course it's affected films that are more or less ready for release, it's also affecting a lot of things that are in production and a lot of events. So FX has stopped production on a lot of shows. Atlanta, Fargo, Snowfall, Why the Last Man. Apple TV have stopped work on a lot of their shows, including The Morning Show. Jimmy Kimmel is doing without an audience, as are most talk TV shows, including Jimmy Fallon. I think James Corden as well. Most of them are now just not doing it. Netflix have shut down production on their shows, including Stranger Things. Sony have stopped production on a lot of their productions, including The Wheel of Time. Disney have stopped production on a lot of different things, even including Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which was meant to do a shoot in Prague, I believe it was. A lot of movies by Disney have also been stopped. Most recently, we heard that The Last Duel, which was the one with Ridley Scott and Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, has stopped. The live-action remake of Little Mermaid, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, which recently we'd heard had got Rick Moranis back, has now stopped production. Home Alone's reboot, Guillermo del Toro's Nightmare Alley, these have all stopped. Theme parks have closed. I know this isn't something we normally cover, but tangentially. Disney and Universal in California and Orlando, they've all closed, as is Disneyland Paris. I know the ones in Japan were closed. I'm not sure if they reopened. CW shows, The Flash, Batwoman, Supergirl, all Berlanti productions are down. Disney or Marvel's Shang-Chi has stopped production. In fact, the director has actually quarantined himself because he has a newborn child. Apparently, it's going to cost them $300,000 a day every day they're not filming. So it's going to be a sizable hit when all is said and done. Netflix, have shut down their offices. A lot of other shows. In fact, it's kind of interesting that the only real studio who hasn't taken much action is Warner Brothers. They're still apparently filming The Matrix 4 and The Batman. Now, I don't know how long that will last for. We'll have to see, but a lot of film festivals have been affected. Tribeca has been postponed. South by Southwest, which was a big hit, has been postponed, or has been cancelled, I should say. I think they actually are doing it, so they're going to show movies to people online within the film community and still give out awards. So kudos to them for that, because it is a massive hit. South by Southwest is a really good film festival because it's not like when you look at what it caters to, a lot of times it is the mid-budget movies. It is not the ones that are, it's one of the weirder film festivals. They're not snobby like a lot of the other ones, and they have had to lay off staff because of this. Apparently it could affect the festivals next year as well. I've heard Cannes is going ahead at the moment, but what's really, really shocking about them is they were apparently offered the chance to buy insurance about 2 weeks ago, and they turned it down. So, really bad choice. WonderCon has been postponed. No word on how this is going to affect Comic-Con or if it will. But E3 has been cancelled for this year. I really think this could be the nail in the coffin for E3. Like, a lot of game developers have kind of pulled out of it in recent years. Sony, I don't think, are doing it. Nintendo aren't doing it. These guys are now going to be doing conferences online. So, good chance that could be where they go in the future. It's a shame because, of course, we're at the start of a new generation of consoles. So that could affect that. Apparently, we're going to get the announcement of a new Harry Potter game for Warner Brothers. That's not happening anymore at E3. Apparently, we're going to hear more about the Batman game. I'm pretty sure I talked about the Batman game like 6 times now and we still know nothing about it. Basically, all sporting events have been suspended or cancelled or at least postponed. The only ones I think that are going ahead are there's some boxing pay-per-views that are apparently still going ahead. Some UFC events have been moved, not yet cancelled. WWE have not officially cancelled WrestleMania. I was meant to go to that, but it looks like someone is going to have to call it, whether it's either the city that's being hosted in Tampa or WWE. They're currently filming shows in an empty building in their performance center in Orlando. So CinemaCon was also cancelled. Tom Hanks got it, and his wife Ruth Wilson, which is shocking. Rita Wilson, I should say. Sorry, Ruth Wilson's a different actress. It's kind of shocking, but kudos to them for kind of coming out with it, because I think that was at a time where people weren't yet taking it entirely seriously. Paley Fest has been cancelled. I mean, like, basically everything is on ice right now. Any major convention in the next 2 months is cancelled. Any big movie that was meant to come out in the next 2 months is cancelled for now. Production on any film, especially the ones filming in Europe, are no longer in production. It's probably the biggest effect or biggest impact on Hollywood in a long, long time. Everything is being stopped right now. We will talk a bit more about some things that are going the other way, things that we're getting early, things that we're getting options to do, because a lot of people are being isolated for the next couple of weeks. In which case, I hope you're enjoying this podcast while you're enjoying cabin fever. Yeah, it's basically any movie, any TV show over the next couple of months is being hit with delays at the very least. Some things are going to be cancelled here. TV shows might go into a production hiatus and never come back. Movies that were in pre-production might not return. It's going to be a massive impact, and we can't realise the full impact of that yet. The Walking Dead, season 11, for example, and Fear the Walking Dead has been hit by delays as well. It's going to be amazing. I don't mean that like an amazing positive way. I just mean that it's shocking. It's probably a better word. What that means for streaming, we don't know. What it means for shows that were meant to premiere, hopefully, if they can finish, they'll be released. But this is unprecedented in Hollywood. And we really just have to wait and see. But And I will give updates on this as much as I can. We don't entirely even know how much entertainment news there's going to be over the next couple of weeks, because it seems like everything is kind of shutting down for safety. Who knows what that means? Again, the Batman is still filming, the Matrix 4 is still filming. I don't think they will be for long. Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting, hopefully, touch wood, a couple of weeks. Hopefully this thing won't last for months and months on end. Yeah, I don't know. This is a very interesting, unprecedented thing to happen. The cinemas are going to be empty. Blockbuster movies are going to be delayed very significantly. TV shows are going to be delayed, at the very least, possibly cancelled. And streaming, I imagine, is going to be a massive deal. But before we get into all that doom and gloom, let's look at trailers for movies that may or may not come out this year when we go to our trailer trash.
This is the theme for trailer trash.
This is the theme for trailer trash. Get in the bin.
Get in the bin.
Get in the bin for trailer trash. We got a few trailers over the last while that I want to speak about. About 5 of them. Again, who knows if some of these are going to be released, but we will have to see. We got a trailer for the next Pixar film, and I'm going to talk about Onward, Pixar's recent film, in a minute. I don't normally talk about movies. I haven't since the beginning, where I do kind of long reviews of movies in the podcast, but I kind of want to talk about that one for a couple of reasons, which we'll get to. But we got a trailer for Soul. This is the one that's meant to come out at the end of the year. It gave us a bit more story. I guess we'd really kind of expected, which is that it's kind of a journey into a person who has passed away. And it goes around basically as a kind of a disembodied soul, and seeing, metaphorically how people get their qualities and things like that. I don't know what to say about this trailer is the truthful thing, because it's quite an interesting one visually, and there's some interesting ideas in it, but it's not a trailer that makes me go like, this looks like a great movie. But I do think it's going to be quite touching, maybe. It's just that it's hard to sell a movie like this from its trailer. I kind of remember feeling that way about Inside Out, but Inside Out had a bit more going on. This seems very spiritual and metaphorical, and it's hard to sell that in a trailer. That being said, there are a few kind of cute moments in it, but not a lot of laughs. It's tough to really figure out what direction this movie is going to go. It really, I said before, I think I've said it a lot of times now, and it certainly seems proven here, is that this is a combination between Coco and Inside Out. It's sort of like, it's almost like the other side of Inside Out. Inside Out was about emotions and feelings, whereas this is kind of a bit more like, spiritual, your soul. And it basically seems that it's just about this magician who has finally had his big chance and then seemingly died, and now has to get back to his body. Again, I like the visual style. It's just that it's hard to sell a movie like this from its trailer. But it looks fine. I think I respect the people involved in it. I think is it Lee Doctor is involved in it? No, it's Pete Doctor and Lee Unkrich are the two guys making it up. I think it's Pete Doctor is involved in this, who gave us Up and Inside Out. So, based on that pedigree alone, you would think this is going to be very good. It's just that it doesn't fully feel like a movie you can sell on its trailer. And that's not a bad thing. A lot of great movies you can't sell on just a trailer. So, I don't know. We kind of have to see how this one works out. I'm excited for it. I think it looks good. I just think it's a movie that's very hard to sell on its trailer. We got another one, and this is basically chalk and cheese as far as another kids film, and that is Scoob. I have gone back and forth on this movie so much. So, I talked about it before, but basically, this is a big budget, CGI animated prequel movie for Scooby-Doo. Now, the reason I don't know how to feel about it is there's a lot of things that are different about this adaptation. First of all, as I said, it's kind of an origin about how Mr. Inc. is kind of brought together and how Scooby and Shaggy meet. We get a lot of kind of cutesy flashbacks. I don't know how to feel about the computer animation is one factor. The other factor is they're very awkwardly and ham-handedly setting up a Hanna-Barbera universe, which includes Dick Dastardly. He's seemingly the villain behind all of this. And Dynamite and was Blue Falcon. I know what they look like. I don't really know anything about them aside from that. Yeah, so we kind of have this odd mishmash of a movie where it's Scooby-Doo, but it's not the things you recognize from Scooby-Doo. It's a prequel and not any of the real mystery things, but it's also a Hanna-Barbera spin-off multiverse kind of movie. What I'm trying to say is there's a lot going on in this for a first movie, and look, Scooby-Doo is great, but it's pretty simple. It's, let's send these kids to solve a mystery. Oh, hey, we thought it was a monster, but of course there's a rational explanation for all this, and therefore it's the old man who we all should have suspected because he's a weird pervert and he hangs around in a fun fair. I mean, that's pretty much all of them, really. Yeah, what we're left with, though, is none of those elements. There's not any kind of creepy, gothic mystery elements in this. It's a lot of lights, and it's a lot of bright colours and sci-fi action, which is not Scooby-Doo at all, really. So that is what gives me pause. They also got rid of a lot of the, established voice actors for the character, and got celebrity voices, and yeah, you kind of begin to see the problems with this, right? I also have really changed Scooby-Doo. It seems now like he can talk like proper full sentences, and it doesn't work. Like Scooby-Doo was generally like "Roro," or like one word's like "I don't know," like really simple sentences. But there's a part in this trailer where he's like giving like proper eloquent things, and it doesn't work with the voice. Like he says like they're on a spaceship. I think this was actually the first trailer. They're on a spaceship and it's all bright and stuff, and they're like, "Oh, what is this place? It's all bright and lit." And someone says like, "Oh, it's him and Shaggy," and Shaggy's like, "Oh, this is the Falcon Fury, which is the ship or whatever," and he goes, "IKEA," and then Shaggy's like, "Did you say IKEA?" And he goes like, "Oh, I didn't say IKEA, I said IKEA," and it goes on for so long. You're like, what the hell is he saying? Why is he speaking like this? It's really frustrating. It's not like Scooby-Doo from that regard, and it's also irritating, and it kind of ruins it. Like you can you can understand what he's saying, but it's like just irritating. It's like, why? I understand why he spoke in just short bursts now, and you kind of need Scooby to be likable. So yeah, I was very cautious about this movie. I kind of thought it might work, but I thought that the Hanna-Barbera stuff was going to be very limited. Instead, it seems to be at the forefront and basically be the crux of the whole thing. So this film, in my opinion, is going to suck. It looks bad. It's not very funny. Characters don't look like the actual characters. Not that they have to be. Like, again, I'm not going to be like, of all the franchises, I'm like, this needs to be faithful. Scooby-Doo's not one of them. But like, it's just a mismatch. It looks like a mess. It looks like a reskin of any animated movie with the Scooby-Doo elements involved, which, yeah, not a great trailer, not a thing I'm particularly excited for. Assuming this does come out, I think it's meant to come out like April or May maybe, so maybe again it could be delayed with all that's been going on. We got another trailer for a movie that I'm sure is going to flop regardless of when it comes out, because in Disney they do live action movies, they just swing for the fences with some of them, and they just don't work. And I think this is going to be one of them. It's going to be like A Wrinkle in Time, or Pete's Dragon, one where it's just like they just flew a bit too close to the sun on this one, and that is Artemis Fowl, based on the Owen Colfer book. This has been in development hell for a long time. I think Artemis Fowl, the book, has kind of seen its day, like I feel like the popularity of those has kind of waned. If they had adapted this like 10-15 years ago, boom, would have been a massive success. Not even 10 years ago, 15 maybe years ago, maybe even 20 years ago, to be honest. It seems like it's too little too late. Now, I read Artemis Fowl, but again, when I did, it was a long time ago. This trailer does very little for me. It just feels like one of those weird sci-fi movies where you're like, why did they put so much money into this? Like, if you removed yourself from knowing anything about Artemis Fowl, I don't know how you would be invested for it at all. It's like, oh, what? It's like a sci-fi world with pixies and, okay, trolls, I guess. Whatever. There's nothing in this that grabs me. Colin Farrell's in it. That's new. Colin Farrell is Artemis Fowl's dad. I don't think Artemis Fowl's dad was in it that much, from memory. I think he was maybe involved in the second one, loosely. The big thing that was really really cool. I was going to say really investing. I don't think that's a sentence. One of the things that was cool about Artemis Fowl, especially reading as a kid, was that Artemis Fowl wasn't a good guy. He was a bad guy. Artemis Fowl was basically an evil genius billionaire. He was a villain. And of course, he kind of grew over the course of the novels and over the course of the story. But he wasn't a likeable character. He was kind of a badass from memory. But they kind of have Disney-fied it, where he's a good guy, seemingly, and it's taken out a lot of those elements, and they don't want our character to be too unlikable. And as a result of that, this feels like it's not going to satisfy anyone. People who don't know the books are not going to know what it is or have any interest. People who are big fans of the books aren't getting something that's necessarily very faithful. So we're kind of in no man's land here. Being objective, it just doesn't look that interesting. And that could be a bad trailer, but they've delayed this once already. This is the second trailer for it, actually. I'd forgotten I'd seen the first trailer. Yeah, there's not much in it. I would love if this came out and was good. I would love if it came out and it was a success. Both seem kind of unlikely, unfortunately, based on this. Then we got a trailer for Jungle Cruise, which, okay, well, before I talk about the trailer for Jungle Cruise, I want to talk about the really odd posters they put out, okay? So character posters, if you're not aware, are very, very common for big movies, big budget movies especially, right? And all they are is you take a character from the movie, as you can tell from the title, and you put them in there to show, like, this is the character in our movie, and he's part of a large ensemble cast or whatever. So it's basically just a bit of vanity, giving each actor their own poster, plugging that the actors in the movie, reminding them, hey, these are the people in the movie. And it's pretty simple. Put one actor on a poster. I don't know what the decision process here was. So they put out character posters for this, okay? But I guess they were like, we need everyone to know that there's two leads in it. I don't know, was it a vanity thing from the actors? I don't know, was it Disney being like, we can't risk having people just see one character poster and think that that's the only big name actor in it? So they put out these really awkward posters, one of which is The Rock standing to the forefront. This is The Rock's character poster for all intents and purposes. And he's holding a torch, but the torch is awkwardly blocking out Emily Blunt. Like, you can see she's there. It's blocking out her face. She got fucking Mike Wazowski'd. And it says The Rock, of course, as all these character posters do. It says the actor. And sometimes it says the character. And then in smaller writing it says Emily Blunt, who is hidden behind The Rock's biceps and torch. And then they did the same for Emily Blunt, where Emily Blunt is at the forefront, but she's awkwardly blocking out The Rock. But of course, The Rock is a mountain of a man, so you can see a bit more of The Rock, and they say The Rock's name under Emily Blunt's name in smaller text, which is so awkward looking. It was like, why are they either put out a poster with both of them, or put out a poster with each one of them? Like, why are you awkwardly blocking your actors? It looks so stupid. It has to be a vanity thing. They must have it in the contract, like, they must appear in all posters. Like, ugh. Like, if you want an example of recent character posters, look at the Fast and Furious posters. Each actor and each character got their own poster. Pretty simple to do. Anyway, let's get to the trailer. So, if you're not aware, Jungle Cruise is a ride in Disney. Same way that Pirates of the Caribbean was. And Pirates of the Caribbean, when it came out, no one expected it to be A, good, and B, a big success. It was kind of like Disney are idiots for adapting a ride. They've tried adapting other rides and failed miserably. They tried with the Haunted Mansion, they tried Country Bear Jamboree or whatever it was. They've never captured the success again. Even critically, you could probably argue they never captured the success of the first Pirates of the Caribbean ever again. So this is their new attempt at that. And I'm guessing the plot of Jungle Cruise is it's a water ride, you go on a boat. This is so... What is this? I don't even know what to say, because it's like... It's an action movie set in the jungle, where they're on a tiny boat, and it basically throws every element in there. It looks like there's supernatural elements, and it looks like there's some sort of Indiana Jones vibes, and it's clearly very much taking a lot of influence from Pirates of the Caribbean, and there's comedy, and there's action, and oh my god, everything in this, there's like, there's fighting with animals, and there's the MacGuffins of bringing people back to life or curing death or something. It's tonally all over the place. They basically seem to be like Pirates of the Caribbean is on for the sea, but Jungle Cruise will be Pirates of the Caribbean in the jungle. And that could work. But I don't understand what this is at all. There's war, there's some sort of war elements in it, I think. There's a part where Jesse Plemons is in a submarine in the Amazon River. I don't know, is he meant to be like a surrogate for some sort of soldier or some sort of Nazi thing? They never put Nazis in a Disney movie anytime soon, but it's a mishmash. They had very little impact on anyone, from what I can see. And in the trailer, I mean, I don't know what this is going for. It's such an odd choice. Like, and it seems like they were like, we'll adapt this, and then they're like, okay, how do we adapt this? And they were like, I don't know. put the Rock in it. Put the massive mountain of a man that the Rock is, and put him on a tiny boat with Emily Blunt. Throw a lot of snakes in there because we want people to be like, oh, Indiana Jones. Put some sort of weird swamp men. I think there were swamp kind of men in the trailer. They really reminded me of the kind of skeleton zombie crews in kind of sea fish crews that were in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, you know? Have some MacGuffin about time, was it? Like the Fountain of Youth or something? It's a mess. Is it any good? I mean, some of the action looks okay. Nothing special. I'm not sure about the comedy. Yeah, I'm not sure about this movie at all. It baffled me. I don't know why this is being made. I mean, sure, it could be good. I hope it is, but I don't know. And finally, a trailer I want to talk about that came out, which, badly timed for this to be released now, assuming it's going to get delayed, is Black Widow. This is apparently the final trailer for Black Widow, which will change if it is delayed, I'd imagine. And I imagine it is going to be delayed. This is a really, really good trailer. I really enjoyed it. We get a bit more insight into Taskmaster, who is, of course, our big villain. If you don't know, Taskmaster in the comics has a kind of a memory. I can't remember the official name for it. But basically, he can see skills and he's able to do them. So, because of that, he copies all sorts of heroes and villains. Now I also think in the comics he loses other memories when he does that, but I don't know I don't know how that's going to carry over. Taskmaster looks like he's going to be a great villain, man. We see him copying Spider-Man, Captain America, Black Panther, Hawkeye, or maybe he just has a bow and arrow. I don't know if he's copying Hawkeye. That's how unimpressive Hawkeye is, where you're like, oh, that could be someone who is as skilled as Hawkeye or just happens to have a bow and arrow. Yeah, Taskmaster looks like he's going to be a great villain. Now, as far as who it is, I've heard all sort of speculation. A lot of people are saying, oh, it could be Rachel Weisz is Taskmaster. That's a big twist. But there's a guy on the cast, I think his name is O.T. Fagbella, who's on the posters, hasn't been seen any of the marketing, so I assume he is him, but I don't know. It could be. Yeah, Taskmaster looks like he's going to be a great villain. We see a moment where he's watching Iron Man 2, basically, and looking at Black Widow fighting, presumably going to pick up her style in an attempt to fight her. It should be very interesting. The fight scenes look really good in this film. They just look they have a bit of grit, and you would need that for a spy movie. And I think with a movie like this, where it is not a character with a load of superpowers, you need something that's going to have a bit of grit to it. And that works very well. The action in general in the film actually does look pretty well. We see a few car chases, some explosions, that kind of thing. Pretty straightforward. The basic story I got from this is that Natasha comes back to Russia where the Red Room is. So the Red Room is where they train Black Widows. The Red Room is now run by Taskmaster, and she goes back to her family, I guess her surrogate family, presumably the people who trained her. We have Red Guardian, played by David Harbour. Rachel Weisz is there. I can't even remember the character she plays, but she was Mother Russia or something? I don't know. I can't remember. She's an evil Russian woman in the comics, so who knows if it's going to go that way. And Florence Pugh is Yelena Belova, who has become a Black Widow in other stories. Or become the Black Widow, I should say, because there's a load of Black Widows in this. And yeah, the basic plot is that they seemingly want to take down the Red Room. And there's a lot of Black Widows and things. So there's presumably going to be a lot of Scarlett Johansson fighting Black Widows, taking this down from the inside kind of thing. Some sort of betrayal, and of course it's a prequel, so We'll see how that works out. It looks really good. I'm interested in it. I think I'm quite excited for this a lot more than I expected. I think it's better than the first trailer. Not that I thought that was a bad trailer either. It puts a lot of theories out there. I guess I'll say potential spoilers here. It could be nothing. There's a part in the trailer where Florence Pugh's character, Yelena Belova, is on an operating table. And it looks like she's got some sort of mask on her face. Now, we've seen masks in the Marvel Universe before. Like that we've seen in the Winter Soldier, where basically you can look like anyone and take that mask off. So the big question is this actually Florence Pugh? Or is it Scarlett Johansson? Is this some sort of operation to change faces? Which sounds stupid. No, but the thing is, spoilers for Endgame, that Black Widow is dead. So is there the possibility that they're going to say, oh, that wasn't the real Black Widow, it was Florence Pugh, and Scarlett Johansson is alive and well? Because there is a story in the comic, I believe, from what I've read, where Black Widow swaps her identity with Yelena Belova, and they think that one of them is dead while they're actually alive. Please don't do that. Delay the movie. Get this right. That is a really awkward bit of retroactive continuity to be like, she's still alive. Hopefully, this is just people going a bit mad, and I don't know. It could be nothing, but it's an interesting theory. I hope is wrong. I just think that you need to keep Natasha Romanoff dead. If you want to bring in another Black Widow, you can bring in Yelena Belova, set her up here. Yeah. This is good. Of course, there's also seems to be some more presence of William Hurt, Thunderbolt Ross. Whether that's going to link into the future, I don't know. It's hard to say how a lot of this is going to actually link into the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a whole, because of course it's a prequel. I think it takes place after Civil War, I believe. So Natasha's a fugitive at this point, really. It can obviously fill in a few gaps. I would not be surprised if Taskmaster lived. Because it just makes sense to have a villain that good kind of reappear, especially as this universe grows into TV and movies. Possibly this could set up something like Thunderbolts. I don't know. We'll have to see.
The minute-long meltdown is presented by Chernobyl, not the disaster.
Well, I haven't done a minute-long meltdown in a while. But to be honest, there's a lot of things that have pissed me off over the last couple of months that I haven't been doing it. It was a tough pick. First of all, let's talk about some good news. This is to bring me down from my anger. Harvey Weinstein's going to jail. 20 years. Brilliant. Good justice for his victims. Finally, that prick is going behind bars. Now, let's go to the other side of the pond and look at the Me Too movement in France. Let's talk about the 2020 César Awards, which are basically the French equivalent of the Oscars. And nominated for Best Director is Roman Polanski. Sorry, did I say nominated? I meant winner of Best Director, Roman Polanski. I'm putting a minute on the clock. I'm going to vent here. Maybe I'll talk about it after. Here we go. Right, Roman Polanski, by the way, in case you don't know, maybe you've heard his name in the news, let's go through what Roman Polanski did. He is a child rapist. I don't use that term lightly. It's the truth. He has admitted to it. He was in America and sodomized a 13-year-old girl under the guise of doing a photo shoot with her. And then he admitted to those charges to get a lesser charge, which, by the way, his other charges, you should really look them up. He's a real piece of work. And then he escaped from the country. He left America. The reason he is in France is because France have a policy of not extraditing French citizens. So this criminal, this rapist, is still being nominated for awards, which apparently he made a film about the Dreyfus Affair, the Officer and a Gentleman film. And he made a load of illusions that he himself is some sort of being persecuted and he's innocent. And you know what? The people I want to talk about the César Awards are actually the cast and director of Portrait of a Lady on Fire, who walked out. There we go. I think I need to stop this segment. It's just making me too angry, too aggressive. Right. A lot of language in there too. Yeah, Roman Polanski won an award for Best Director in the year 2020. Now, look, I get some people are going to say, oh, judge the art, not the artist. I'm sorry, but this artist raped a young girl. And the only reason he hasn't faced charges is because he fled. Okay? He's a child rapist, a coward who couldn't stand by his own actions, and he's damaged the life of numerous people by not giving them justice and running away. It's disgusting. The people I mentioned, check out Portrait of a Lady on Fire, by the way. It's a fantastic film. Just missed out in my top 10. The director of which is Adele Haenel. Oh, no, sorry, Celine Sciamma directed it, and the actress in it, Adele Haenel, walked out and in protest, as rightfully they should have. It's disgusting. It's insane. And also I want to commend the protesters at the César Awards who clashed with police outside. Fuck you, Roman Polanski. You're the one that I watch. That's the best theme I have, and I've only ever used it once. Oh, I love that one. Okay, the one that I watch, as I said, normally this is highlighting maybe one thing. But I'm going to try to highlight a few things if I can, because of course people are going to be locked inside with the ongoing coronavirus stuff. So, just to start off, show I was going to recommend that I've been watching quite a bit of actually, is the Harley Quinn animated series. I don't know how you can watch this legally, to be quite honest with you, but I think it's really good. It's basically an Adult Swim show. It's on Adult Swim in Canada even. It's like, for those people who grew up, I said this on Twitter already, but it's like the people who grew up on the Batman TV series, the animated one, were like, okay, now that we're older and we're into Rick and Morty, how can we do this? It's consistently hilarious, but what I love is, like, first of all, I will say this, Harley Quinn is a character I can only take normally in small doses. Sometimes it'd just be very grating, but they managed to avoid that as well, where she seems like a human character, which is not always the case in a lot of those adaptations. Like, there's times where she just comes off like a normal character. The other thing is that they have a really good grasp of the dynamic of these characters and the kind of hierarchy of villains and how they would interact. Like, they didn't abandon all that stuff to make it more comedic, which is great. And God, the way they've just adapted some of these characters, I absolutely love. So we have, first of all, like, the dynamic between Joker and Harley is perfect. It's better than it was in Suicide Squad. Better than it was in a lot of adaptations. The relationship between Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn is very well done. This kind of sisterhood, almost a kind of a romantic one as well. Really well done. Just even the way that there's kind of a hierarchy of villains, you know, it's like these are the A-list villains and these are the B-list villains. They kind of mess around with that dynamic with the Legion of Doom and stuff. But the way they've reimagined some of the characters, I love so much. Like Clayface, of course, Clayface is an actor, but the way they make him, like the way they embody him as this kind of pompous actor is absolutely hilarious. I love it. Same goes for like one of the characters I love that they've adapted, and I don't know, whoever thought of this needs a raise, and it is Bane. Bane, anytime Bane is on screen in this and he says anything, it's amazing. Like, Bane is a character that I know people love Bane, but to me, Bane has always been kind of he has a cool backstory, but he's always just a glorified henchman, really. And what they've done in this is they've acknowledged that he's like a well-known villain and popular, but he's also kind of a petty, kind of sad, awkward character. Like, there's a scene I really love where they're at the Legion of Doom table. I'm going to explain this, and it's not going to be funny at all, but I swear it is, okay? They're at this, I'm going to explain the whole concept and you're going to see what sort of show is like. So they're at Penguin's son's bar mitzvah. And the Legion of Doom, all the premier bad guys are at one table. And Harley's like, I want to be in the Legion of Doom, you know, but everyone sees her as basically just a psychic to the Joker. And now she's nothing now that they've broken up. So Joker and Bane are at the one table. And Joker is sitting there and he gets given his pork, which is his main or whatever, and Bane has chicken. And Joker just goes, oh, I don't like the look of this pork. And he looks at Bane's chicken and just goes, oh, your chicken looks good. So he just takes Bane's chicken, and Bane is just like an eternal Sazak, and he just goes, oh, and he reaches to take Joker's pork while he's eating, because Joker's now eating his chicken. And Joker just goes, no, I might want that later. So now he's got 2 plates, and Bane is just like, oh, what are we doing here? That was so not worth explaining. It's been like 2 minutes explaining that, and it won't be funny, but in context, it's so funny. He's just this pathetic character. Like, he gets, at one point, he gets a question wrong at a table quiz about Gotham Stadium, and he's like, I'm going to blow up Gotham Stadium. They re-envisage, like, Batman and Gordon as a kind of almost like they're in love, but they can't admit it. Like, not in a gay way, but just in a kind of like, we don't want to admit how friendly we are. Aquaman is hilarious. He was in one episode. He's just like over the top pompous. They like, you know, all the work they did to make Aquaman badass is completely undone here. I'm really enjoying it. I would recommend it to anyone that likes the DC universe, is a fan of kind of Adult Swim shows, or Batman in general. I think it's a really good, break from that. As far as what else to keep you updated and interested, this is almost like when I first started a podcast, I had a segment called Cool 8, which was looking at kind of top shows and top things coming out, and I guess this sort of is that. But Dark Side of the Ring, if you're a wrestling fan, I'm sure there's quite a few wrestling fans listening from the Phoenix Wrestling Network. Hopefully there is anyway. If you have followed over, I appreciate that a lot. Dark Side of the Ring, which was a great kind of docu-series on kind of scandals and wrestling, returns for its second season Tuesday week, Paddy's Day week, 24th. That's also the date where Disney Plus is launching in Europe. Now, they've announced what is on it now. They were meant to have a big event, but they had to cancel it. But all 600 episodes of Simpsons are up on that. I said all as if it's not still going, but Simpsons episodes are up on it. There's actually some X-Men stuff on it as well. And also of note, if you have the Disney Plus network now, or if you're going to get it when it launches, and again, I don't know if this is confirmed yet for the European launch, but it was only announced today. But Disney have are going to put, sorry, I'm recording this on the 14th. By the time it comes out, it will have been put up on Disney Plus. Frozen 2 is going up 3 months early to keep people sane. So if your kids are wrecking your head at home, Frozen 2 should be up on Disney Plus, along with, of course, the original Frozen. And a load of other stuff, of course, if you're getting Disney Plus just after launch. There is a deal at the moment if you want to get a year, but make sure the stuff on that you would like first. For some reason, they're not putting all the Mandalorian up. They're putting it up week by week. Like, that's stupid. Like, as if we haven't waited long enough for it. It's like everyone has seen it that was going to watch it anyway. Like, also, speaking of Star Wars, the digital release of Rise of Skywalker is taking place on the 17th, I believe. So if you haven't seen that, if you didn't want to see it in cinemas, you can now see it. What else has gone up in recent times that's well acclaimed? If you have Hulu, what's that guy's name? Pete. He's on SNL. He was going out with them with Ariana Grande. Pete Davidson. His film has gone up on Hulu. The name of it escapes me, but it's very critically acclaimed. Do you want to check it out? Yeah. Aside from that, I mean, I'm naming TV shows. A lot of stuff is going to go up on. I would say keep a good eye on streaming services over the next couple of weeks as we're kind of locked into warehouses. Good sites. I'm just going to recommend a few sites for that now to help you out with that. Go to justwatch.com. This is basically click your area. You'll be able to see what's on any of the streaming libraries on any of those. It's very good for seeing what's just been added to Netflix. But you can also check things like Amazon. You can also, change it depending on your region. If you're using a VPN, you'll be able to see what's on other countries' Netflix. That way, or see where, you search by title on Just Watch, I should say. So basically, if you're saying, I want to watch, I don't know, The Amazing Spider-Man, for some reason you want to watch that, search it in and you'll be able to see what streaming service it's on in whatever part of the world you're in. Now, if you do have a VPN and you want to use basically a way of finding out what country has what, for example, let's say you want to watch all the Harry Potter movies, go to unogs.com, unogs.com, search what you're looking for. It'll tell you what countries has it or not. For example, I mentioned all the Harry Potter films. I believe Spain and Portugal exclusively has all of those. So those are some very few quick recommendations. I should have more, really. But yeah, there's a lot of digital releases of some of the Oscar movies are also coming out now. If this goes into April, Parasite is going to be on Hulu, for example. Yeah, again, streaming services are looking like what the way things are going to be for the considerable future. Those are some sites to help you. If you're a gamer, Doom Eternal is coming out next week. At the end of this week, I guess, by the time this comes out. And Call of Duty Warzone, which is Call of Duty's Battle Royale mode, is now available for free, and it's apparently very good. So, a few things to keep you sane over the next few days. again, maybe as this rolls on, if we're still stuck inside, I'll come up with a more comprehensive list. Or if you have some recommendations or something, you should say tweet it at me and I'll retweet it. Because a lot of things, people are going to be looking for a lot of entertainment. And hopefully a podcast. Recommend this one, please. Now we're going to move on. I'm going to talk a little bit about Onward.
You're listening to the Pop Cult Pod, and this is a transition.
So if you enjoy this podcast, you're really only getting half the story if you haven't checked the Pop Cult Pod YouTube channel. I've got reviews, most recent films all normally go up there. I just put up a Sonic and Birds of Prey review. I've got trailer breakdowns, all sorts of weird randomness I've forgotten is up there that you can, to be honest, probably blackmail me with at this point. And I mean, series look, Deadly 7 ongoing series I've looked at the moment, horror films. I've looked at extreme horror. A series look I've looked at Child's Play films. I've done 5 of those films so far. Hopefully the next one is coming really soon. If you're stuck inside self-isolating, maybe that's not a bad shout. Check them out, definitely on the YouTube channel. This is an awkward promo for myself. I'm gonna shut up. Goodbye. Shut up. Bye. Okay, so Onward. I haven't really talked about a film at length on the podcast in a review form for a while, but I kind of want to talk about this one because I find it interesting for the wrong reasons, actually. And I also want to have the word Onward in my title of every episode, so that's why I'm doing this, really. So Onward is the latest Pixar film, okay? And I think a lot of people had the same concerns that I did when we saw the trailers, which was, this doesn't really look like a Pixar film. It looks kind of pretty standard. It looks like a kind of a universal concept, you know, like what you see with Illumination, these kind of things. Like, basically, what if the real world, but fantasy? And that's one of the big problems with this movie, in my opinion. It's interesting because I had 2 films rocking around my head when I watched this movie. And one is really obvious, which is Shrek. So the first question is, why did it work in Shrek, having this fairy tale, fantastical world with modern elements? Why did it work in Shrek, and why did it not work here? And I think the answer is, with Shrek, it was, the characters weren't aware that it was a modernized world. The things like, they were basically just, this happened to be their world, and to the audience it was like wink wink, nudge nudge. This is a bit like our world, even though there's things like dragons, or like, especially when you watch something like Shrek 2, for example. There's like, you know, Far Far Away is basically their version of Hollywood, but they're not like making a big deal of like, hey, someone's developed movies because I guess we have movie stars, or things like that. And in Onward, the whole kind of premise and the prologue to this is that the world used to be magical and fantastical, and now it's become modernized and we have technology. And that's kind of one of the key ideas in the film, but it kind of, there's so many problems with that premise for a couple of reasons in the story, because basically it has this magical fantasy element, and then it's like, oh, look at all this technology. Oh, we need to go back because we're losing our natural abilities. And obviously the parallel they're saying to the real world is we have an over-reliance on technology and we're not really realizing our full potential. But there is a couple of instances in this movie where, and one key moment where it wouldn't work without modern technology. Like, it wouldn't, one of the plot points, it wouldn't work without a van. So it's sending a real mixed message, and it was very heavy-handed in that regard. As going back to Shrek, they weren't making a point about why we were in a fantastical world and comparing that to the real world. This is doing that. It's like, and because of that, it really creates a bigger dividing line between the real world and the fantasy elements again, which means that it works even less. Now, another film I was thinking of was actually a Disney film, and this might be just because I really watched a film, or I watched a YouTube video recently by Lindsay Ellis, former nostalgia chick, but she makes great video essays, and I watched a video she did on Hercules, and it was basically about how Hercules was such a mishmash of different ideas. And I felt like that a lot about Onward, because there is a lot of admirable elements here. It's just that a lot of these elements don't really belong together. Like, the basic, as I said, kind of underlying theme is we're not realizing our full potential because we're relying on technology and that kind of thing. But that doesn't really work in this scenario because it's you're comparing a fantasy to kind of real world element. So it's like you have characters who are like, oh, I can't fly anymore because while I'm not flying, I'm using an airline. And I can't, run fast because I can use a car. Even though naturally I was able to run very fast. And that's very clunky, but I also don't think it works. Like, because if you're trying to draw real world parallels here, like human technology, like flying, is kind of necessary if you want to get anywhere. It's not like we have an alternative. And if you were trying to bring it back to its basic of like screens and like phone use and that kind of thing, there would be something there. But there's nothing like that in the film. Like, and they basically did that already with WALL-E. So it's kind of like, what point are you trying to make? So that's what I think I said was the main concern for a lot of people, was that the fantasy elements wouldn't work with the real world elements. And I think that's true. But the other thing is, I'm not entirely sure what the point of this film was. What the story was. I think it's really good. I think the ending of it is really, really good, I should say. It doesn't. Some people are writing about it as if it saves the whole movie. It didn't for me, because I thought it was just so obvious where it was going. And when it comes to Pixar, like Pixar put out some of the best films of all time. Like they single-handedly, in a lot of instances, are like where you put entertainment for children at like the top tier. Like the best kids films, a lot of them are Pixar films. And there's a lot of recurring ideas and themes and ways they accomplish these things that are recurring in a lot of Pixar films. Like Pixar have rules for writing. You can look them up online. They've been kind of revealed. But in comparison to a lot of their work, I thought this was so amateurish. Like, I'm not putting myself as like an amazing like film analyzer when it comes to like screenplays and that kind of thing. But there was so many things where as soon as they introduced one element, very heavy-handedly, I should say, not heavily-handedly. That sounds like something Ned Flanders would say. Heavy-handedly, there's like they introduce an element just so you know it's going to come back later. It's like the kind of Chekhov's gun kind of thing, where it's introduced early on and you're like, right, well, this is going to come into play in the third act. And it nearly always does. And the problem with it is that one of the reasons it doesn't feel like a Pixar film, aside from the ideas, is that it's so obvious and it feels like there's no real justification for putting in some of these elements. Like, to be honest, I think it leans too far into the fantasy elements. I think you could do some of these things without being that reliant on the fantasy tropes, but then what even is the point of your film? And like, there are times where it does okay with this. There's some creative elements with pixies who are actually bikers, which is pretty entertaining, and there's a few cute visual gags with the dad, because as we said before, the dad comes back and they basically are only able to bring up to his legs, so he's walking with her legs, so they have a fake body on top of him. There's a few good visual gags there, but it felt so amateurish. The characterization was really bad. Like our two characters are brothers, and one of them is like and socially awkward nerd, and you're like, oh, that's obvious. And the other guy's kind of a D&D kind of dork. And again, it feels kind of weird that like even Dungeons and Dragons will be like, this is like Dungeons and Dragons in this world, like, or whatever the equivalent in this is. It wouldn't be the same as like Dungeons and Dragons in this world, if you know what I mean. Like, people put Dungeons and Dragons on a kind of thing of like, oh, it's nerdy, because it's dealing with fantasy and all that kind of thing, and it's seen as kind, you're only using your imagination, that kind of thing, right? But that's only fantasy by our standards, because we live in a world with reality. Whereas if you're playing Dungeons and Dragons in a world of fantasy, that doesn't really work as an equivalent, because that stuff happened in the context of that world in Onward. This is a really confusing point. In the context of that world of Onward, that stuff is real and has happened. Like, it would be more like if you were playing in that context, if you were totally to flip it, I guess the nerdy thing would be something like Risk, where it's like human conflicts. But again, I'm getting bogged down on a point there. The characters in this aren't interesting at all. It basically is so lazily written. Like, a lot of Disney films are accused of this because they have what they call an I want song, which is where a character sings directly at camera and says, "This is what I want, will I get it?" And he'll have it by the end of the movie. Happy ending. That's the song exactly in Onward. No. Basically what I'm saying is that characters lay out their motivations very, very clearly, and then it's brought up. Now, of course, Pixar don't really have musical numbers, generally speaking. But this character literally makes a list, and it's like, oh, so this is how it's going to go. And clearly, this is what I want. I am obviously going to achieve it. And it's just so obvious. And I know this is a kid's film. Like, I get it, but I don't even know. I don't think kids would even be interested in this film because the character designs are not interesting. Like, I literally looked at a few of these character designs and I'm like, why? There's not even much point in making them fancy characters because it just looks like, generally speaking, a regular person they painted purple. The fantasy elements are oftentimes kind of just forgotten. It's like, it feels like they think it's enough to just have it be in a fantasy world with fantasy characters. It doesn't have any creative thing to say about it. It's mostly just puns around fantasy elements, which don't work. And on the other side of it then, it's not funny, like, at all. I think I got maybe 2 laughs out of it, and they were both from the same type of gag with the dad. It's just not creative. It's a real shame that Pixar have made a film that is so, in my opinion, bland. Now, I know I'm in the minority, and I did like the ending, as obvious as it was. It just felt derivative of so many films, and because of that, not really original. And I don't feel like the elements of real world take on a fantasy worked at all. Like, I think if this wasn't a Pixar film, people would be tearing into it a bit more. I don't know, maybe that's some sort of critical bias. Maybe I'm wrong there. And I'm trying to think now. Is there anything else I need to say? Like, don't get me wrong, the relationship between the brothers is quite sweet, but again, it's so obvious where the whole thing is going to go. You will always, there was very rarely a moment where the film was a step ahead of me. And that's not me patting myself on the back. I think it's so obvious if anyone who has seen any of these films, especially Disney Pixar films, I think Pixar is starting to settle into their own tropes. You know, and it's a shame because this is their first kind of original film. Well, not in a while, but, you know, they had so many sequels recently. We were hoping that they'd get more out of an original entry here. But it's the same kind of two friends on the road, and they don't really get on. The kind of buddy cop dynamic, and then after an event they bond, and then it's okay. So yeah, very disappointed with Onward. I'd say go see it, but I don't think anyone is going to go see it. Anyway, it didn't have a great weekend. I think that was, to be honest, before coronavirus scares. Well, a lot of people are blaming on the coronavirus. Now that the coronavirus scare is a bit more real, it definitely isn't going to do well. But I don't think you need to rush out to see it anyway. Wait until it's on Disney Plus. It's a disappointing, pretty unoriginal entry from a studio that should know a lot better. And it's a really, in my opinion, if you want an attempt at screenwriting 101, if you want to realize what screenwriting is at its most basic level, you should look at this movie, because I feel like it's basically, and a negative, that this film is so obvious in its intentions and in its structure and in its plot points. So usually this would be where I wrap up the show with justifying my place on the Phoenix Wrestling Network, but as I said, I'm not on the Phoenix Wrestling Network anymore. So I need a new way to wrap up the show, which is why I'm very happy to introduce our new sign-off segment, Useless IMDb Trivia. All trivia may be useless, but no trivia is more useless than useless IMDb Trivia. That's a piece of trivia too. Okay, so before we get into that segment, I'm going to talk about the Phoenix Wrestling Network, kind of what's happened there at the very end. So stick around after the outro music if you want to hear the story there. It just doesn't really fit into the structure of our regular show. As far as useless IMDb Trivia, the genesis of this, the benchmark to weigh this against, okay, this is where I got the idea for this. So sometimes after watching movies, I look at the frequently asked questions or the trivia on IMDb. And years ago, I saw X-Men First Class. And, you know, flicking through the trivia, I think this was quite soon after its release, so there wasn't much there. But what was there was... The thing is, you can edit this yourself. You can edit the trivia. So what happens a lot of the time is people just make weird tangential connections that aren't a bit of trivia, but they just manage to make two connections and they think it's impressive and interesting. And the piece of information there about about X-Men First Class. It said, this isn't the first time January Jones has starred with someone with a pork-based product in their surname. In this film, she stars with Kevin Bacon, but in Mad Men, she stars with John Hamm. Which is nothing. Well, if you brought that up as a bit of information to be like, hey, did you know that January Jones has starred with something with a pork product? They'd walk away before you finish your sentence. So that's what we're looking for here. Every week, at the end of the show, I will, if we talked about a random film, I'll pick it from that random film. So in this episode, for example, we talked about The Amazing Spider-Man. So I'm on the Amazing Spider-Man trivia page, and I will try to look at this sight unseen if I can. This is, by the way, a really good way of finding this useless trivia is just go down to the very end of the IMDb page. They're generally not upvoted. Okay, so I just saw what this is. So this is okay. Let's set the scene here. This is on the IMDb page for The Amazing Spider-Man. It came out in 2012 with Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone. I don't know what this connection is. It says, released on the 10th anniversary of the Powerpuff Girls movie. Like, there's no connection there. That means nothing. Powerpuff Girls and Spider-Man have no connection there. And what's even more interesting is that 1 of 9 people found this interesting. So one person was like, yeah, that's pretty interesting. I have to find out why that is. There must be a connection there. I must be missing. I don't know. That's too weird. Who even thought to look up the restate of the Powerpuff Girls movie? Oh, okay. That's our show. If you want to check out my YouTube channel, Pop Cult Pod, Twitter at pop_cult_pod, Instagram Pop Cult Pod, all one word. Also Pop Cult Compound on Facebook. Hit me up. Did I make some mistakes, or did you disagree with my hot takes? Let me know. Or if you want to contribute something to the show, be sure to give me a shout out. As I've said, I'm going to talk about the Phoenix Wrestling Network after the music here. If you want to stick around and find out what happened there, what's the future, what's the story. Other than that, wash your hands, stay safe, because I cannot spell cult without you. Okay, so if you're listening to this, if you listened to the podcast before, you might be aware that this is the first episode in a while that's not on the Phoenix Wrestling Network. It's back on its original stream, its original feed. So first of all, if you followed over, thank you very much. I really do appreciate it. The reason I want to put this kind of at the end of the show is because I'm going to step outside the persona of Tompott and just speak to you as Tom. Wow, what a riveting transformation! What a thin mask I have. No, really, it just doesn't really fit in with the regular show, and I felt I wanted to talk openly and honestly about the Phoenix Network stuff. It's I don't have any notes in front of me. I'm just going to shoot from the hip here and speak from the heart, I suppose. So, yeah, the Phoenix Network is no more. It's done. It's still there on Spotify, but there's stuff has started disappearing from it. Nothing more is going to go up on it. And I guess speaking, retrospectively, I want to say, first of all, thank you so much to Phoenix Wrestling for putting me on the network to begin with. It really was, just to kind of peel back the curtain a bit here, the way this got started, Marion Armstrong and Luke Barry got onto me during the summer and said, hey, keep in mind, my connection to the network has always been a bit odd. Like, when you look at who was on the wrestling network, it was all the people involved with Phoenix, wrestlers, people that have a clear connection to wrestling, and then me. And I had no connection with Phoenix Wrestling at the time. I was a fan. I knew the guys from back in the previous era of wrestling in Cork, but I had no connection to Phoenix Wrestling. Now that has changed through the network. I've become the ring announcer. At the moment, at least. So hopefully, long may it last, hopefully. And yeah, so he reached out to me, Luke reached out to me and said, we're putting together a podcast network. And it was my podcast, his podcast with Matt Schuyler and Billy Bedlam, Not a Bother. Raven Creed was going to do a podcast, and he was going to do a podcast on Irish wrestling. So I was really happy to be a part of that. Like, when I put this, in closing, and no one benefited from this network more than me. I was doing my own thing. I was never going to tell people I was even doing a podcast, to be honest. So the fact that kind of changed and led to so many great opportunities for me to get back in touch with people that I really had kind of shut out of my life from the wrestling world, and really get a chance to get more ears on my podcast was a fantastic opportunity that, of course, I leapt at. So the question is, why is the Phoenix Network going away? And I think it's not an easy question to answer. And it comes down to a few things. Like, you know, Phoenix is changing a lot. There's a new management coming into Phoenix. I don't know what my relationship is going to be with the new management. That's why I say, you know, hopefully I can continue on as the ring announcer. I hope, you know, I haven't met them. I don't know who it is yet. Hopefully that can continue. I don't know if they were saying that they should shut down the network. I'm not sure. I know, like, for me, it felt like the writing was on the wall for a while anyway. And that wasn't a negative for anyone. It just kind of felt like we were at a point where, you know, like, I don't think I'd call it a failed experiment, because I can't call it a failed experiment for my case, because basically things worked out pretty well for me. But it was kind of a thing where we tried it. It was really good. When this was working, I would say this. I think I might be the only person on the network who's listened to nearly every podcast on the network. That's not to bury anyone. That's just I think that's just a fact. And it kind of, to be honest, like, when this thing was firing on all cylinders, I would put it up there with any podcast network. Like, there were times where we had such a solid lineup of podcasts, but the problem was, you know, they say the key to being successful at podcasting is A, the quality, and B, the consistency. And I think we nearly always, or oftentimes, had quality, but the consistency was a bit scattered, and that's not anyone in particular's fault. But sometimes it would be, oh, we have 3 episodes out this week, and then there would be nothing for months. And that came down to a lot of things. You know, these are a lot of different people that try to figure out their schedules. And the other thing is, like, talking about Luke, he edited everything except for my podcast. He edited all the other podcasts, so he had a lot of work to put into this, which isn't really fair. You know, he's got a young kid. He was trying to run also a wrestling company at the time, along with whatever else he has going on in his personal life. You know, so it's like something had to give. And I also think it's a question that podcasting isn't not for everyone. I know people say, oh, it's just sitting down in front of a microphone, and a lot of people want to try it. It's pretty hard, though, to stick to it, because a lot of the time you don't necessarily see results out of it, is the God's honest truth. Sometimes it's just you talking to yourself, and it feels like you're shouting into the void. And that kind of can be a bit heartbreaking. Other people just don't care. Some people just want to try it, and then they're like, oh, it didn't work out, whatever. I had a podcast once. You know, it's not really something I think would ever going to last. But what it was, I think, when it was doing good, I understand the numbers were good. I think the podcasts in general were quite strong. I think the lineup was good, and I think it was cool to be a part of it. And as I said, it's created a lot of bridges, or rebuilt a lot of bridges for me with the wrestlers in my local wrestling scene, and for Phoenix Wrestling to be a part of that, which has been really awesome for me. So I guess, you know, I talk about the future of what that means. So first of all, I would say as well, I mentioned Luke there, I mentioned Marion Armstrong a few times. Check out his podcast, Couple Up, which he's doing with his partner, Kate. Really enjoying it. Started off as a Love Island podcast, and I don't watch Love Island, but since Love Island has ended, it's become its own thing, and I think it's really, really good. So check out his podcast on Spotify. And as far as the rest of the future goes, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, and I think that's also why I put this at the end of the show, because I want to talk about where I am in my life and why the podcast hasn't really been where I feel like it should be, you know. I feels like I've been kind of mailing it in lately, and it's pretty accurate. I started a new job in January. My free time is vastly disappearing as a result. Now, that doesn't mean I'm done making videos or podcasting or any of that stuff, if anyone cares about that. But what it does mean is that it could be less frequent. The truth is, I didn't want to just put out a podcast that felt like totally lifeless and had no creativity, or it was just me going through the emotions. I don't want to be here like just being a zombie reading out the news. And I think that has happened in the past, to be quite honest. You know, some of the episodes I listen back on and I'm like, this isn't good because my heart's not in it. And I think that was another thing with being on the Phoenix Wrestling Network at the time, was it really lit a fire on me. I was like, I have to, a rising tide raises all boats, and I want to be the one that's in the boat and not drowning in the water. I analogies. In other words, I just felt like I needed to step it up too, and now that's gone as well. And it's the onus is totally on me now, which is I'm totally fine with. That's the way, to a certain degree it always was. But as I said, I don't want to half-ass this. If I'm not going to do it properly, I'm not going to do it at all. So that sounds very, very negative. The positive is that I've been working on ways of trying, like as I said during the main body of the show, the difficult thing about doing this podcast is that the news stacks up. I can spend a lot of time formulating opinions and arguments and doing some research on news stories, and then all of a sudden, your life gets in the way and weeks has passed and that news is no longer relevant. You have to throw it out and start again. So that has happened to me a few times. It's not easy. And then there's the other thing is, like, I haven't done a topic in a long time now. I haven't done a topic since the end of 2019, because that takes a lot of time. And I do want to get back to it. It's just trying to find the time to get it to work, because as I said, I don't want to do it if I can't do it properly. That's why this week I'm doing this, addressing the Phoenix Wrestling Network and my own state, and also the Onward review. It's because I don't have the time properly to commit to doing a feature like I've done in the past, and that will change. It's just that I feel like, even if this doesn't matter to anyone, I think I just need to say it to myself, or as a matter of a public record, that podcast isn't going anywhere. I'm sorry that it's been less frequent, but I'm trying to get better at it. I'm trying to manage my time better. And eventually things will go back to normal. And, this too shall pass. Aside from that, that's the show. This is me being at my most open, my most honest. It's funny because there's all sorts of things. It's weird because I also, as I said, I haven't had an episode in a while. And when I was thinking of doing an episode as well after the award show or after the preview of 2020, I kind of had a few ideas. I had a lot of ideas and suggestions I wanted to do for the Phoenix Network, that it probably won't happen now, realistically, which is fine. But I had a lot of creative ideas there that just kind of get thrown by the wayside. So I'm hoping to utilize those some other way, maybe with Phoenix, maybe for other projects. I don't know. And I will say this, I don't think any of them are listening. But if anyone on the Phoenix Wrestling Network does need a platform to do a podcast on, they're more than welcome to use my stream or appear on this show or whatever the hell they want to do. That's totally fine with me. I don't mind either way. But yeah, my understanding is the podcasts on the Phoenix Wrestling Network are done now, which I think there's a few of them have probably been done for a while anyway. But I think, it's just they've fallen by the wayside. But that's fine. This one isn't going anywhere. I started this by myself. I kind of more or less, continued on with it. As much as I was, on the Phoenix Wrestling stream, and I had the support of the guys there. Generally speaking, I put out my own show. I was working kind of a bit of a lone wolf, as weird as that sounds. And, that's going to continue. Will it be less frequent? Probably. But it's not going anywhere. So I might go through a few format changes. I have to say, we need to check with Guinness, because I think if there's a category for podcast that has changed the most, it changed its format the most in the least amount of time. I've done 30 episodes. This is my 30th episode. And 32 if you count the 2 Irish language episodes. And this podcast format has changed so many times. Like the theme music of this show has had like 4 different changes, 5 different changes. It's crazy. But anyway, that's the show. Hopefully I'll be back in a couple of weeks. I don't also know where the news is going to be as far as entertainment news. There might be no news with all this virus stuff. But we'll see. Thank you for listening to this. Please recommend this to a friend if you think they might enjoy it. Give it a positive review somewhere, iTunes, subscribe on wherever you're finding your podcast. I'd really appreciate it. All right. I'm not going to play the outro music again. I don't really have I don't have a way of ending the show as myself. Tompott has a way of ending the show. But Tom, look at that transformation. Tompott to Tom. That would be like if Bruce Wayne didn't call himself Batman, he just called himself Wayne Man. Like, whoa, who could he be? Okay, so I don't have a way of shining out the show by myself. Okay, I'll do this. La da 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 da.